Hey, we're Saints. Good morning. Welcome to our Crucifixional live stream. Father Chris with you. Glad to have you, beautiful people, with us. This week we've been exploring polarity and that divisiveness and division that's going on out there that we all see and experience. And I know that in our hearts, most people do not want to feel that tension when we get especially involved in our social media feeds and somebody puts something inflammatory and we respond, or we watch the responses, or sometimes people read with delight the argument that goes on in the thread, but it makes most of us feel uncomfortable. And there's that I use the word dissonance, that discomfort inside. And most of us don't want that. Most people, most innocent, pure, real, authentic, honest people want peace, right? Even the not so innocent people really want peace. We all long for that. But yet it's elusive, because when we engage in that kind of stuff, it's inevitable. Now let's talk about it for a little bit. We said we were going to talk today about diabolicalness and made up a word, diabolicalness. The word diabolical, it means having to do with the devil, or something that's so evil or wicked that it is devilish, right? It's uncomfortable, it's gross, it's like anger, it's demonic almost, right? This is how we define the word diabolical. So if somebody says he's so diabolical, or that is so diabolical, it is to say somehow inherently that it's devilish. Now here is the reason that word is defined as such, because the original Greek word diabolos, which is where we get diabolical, you may hear some similarity, diabolos, is often in Scripture translated as the devil, right? It's translated as the devil. I'm going to read to you a text here from Ephesians 6. And this is about the armor of God. So St. Paul is trying to prep his Christian warriors, if you will, his warrior saints, to put on armor of God to defend against diabolos. Listen to these words. This is chapter 6 towards the end. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, right? Diabolos, the devil. The point that I want to make today about that word diabolos is that its root, it's not that so let's say this, it has a meaning and they ascribed it to the character of the devil in the story, right? The word was not made up to stand for devil. The word means to divide, to split through cutting, right? So the idea is that it cuts and splits, diabolos. And when the scriptural writers assign this word to the devil, it means that they're saying that the devil's function, his job, is to divide, right? And you can kind of see this in the biblical stories throughout. In the beginning of the book, he divides man from God, right? Tempting him into sin and eating the forbidden fruit, right? He's dividing, separating man from God. And then the rest of the story unfolds. Right? Even you see the devil come back to play in the book of Job. And the devil's an interesting character in Job, where he is having a conversation with God and he's asking God, sorry if it sounds crass, but let me mess with Job. Let me tempt him. Let me mess with him and test him and see if we can get off the path of being a good servant of God. And God gives permission for him to test him. And his job or function or purpose in Job is to try to tempt and divide man in the person of Job again from God, right? His purpose is division. And so when you're out there and you're feeling that dissonance because you know there is divisiveness, something is diabolical, you have to be aware that really it's devilish, right? Now, I'm not talking about a little guy in a red suit with a pitchfork and horns. That's not how we think of the devil. And if you do, good luck to you, right? But it's something much more nefarious than that. The devil in and of himself is about division, dividing us. And what's happening really more than anything else is that when we engage in that stuff out there, we are dividing ourselves from other human beings. And Christ has called us to unity. And the challenge, and I think what blows my mind the most, is that the content or the topics of conversation with which we are dividing ourselves are so silly that like I said, blows my mind. I can't understand why we're doing it, because most of what we find ourselves engaged in an argument is non-essential. It's kind of what we talked about yesterday. So the challenge for us as warrior saints, all right, We don't want that feeling. Like, I don't like it either. I don't know very many people who actively look to fight with other people. There are some, to be sure, but most people don't want that, right? We don't like it, right? So how do we get through that? How do we overcome this division, this schism, whatever you want to say, whatever word you want to use, this diabolicalness that's going on out there? I think there are a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. One is just don't engage with it, right? Like we talked about yesterday with Titus, the epistle to Titus in chapter 3, verse 10. He's like, if somebody out there is awful and rotten, get away, right? And just don't engage it. Don't deal with it. First of all, because it's boring, right? Most of the arguments, like I read this stuff as much as I can when people, say things against us and Warrior Saints, and I read it, I'm like, I can see that the attempt to enrage me, but it's like, dude, this is boring. It's silly, it's childish, mindless, it's got no value in and of itself, weak argumentation. Why would I engage in that? I don't have time, right? We're teaching every day. I don't have time to engage in people who are deliberately looking to fight, because I don't want that. So number one, don't give it the attention. Just move on from it, right? You got to understand something. If you don't have haters, you're not doing it right anyways, right? Like that's part of the deal. The second thing is, and I think it's important that we talk about it because it was the content of the scriptural verse we read today, the armor of God. Like we have to be, to use St. Paul's metaphor, like the way a soldier would dress for battle with, the breastplate and the shield and the sword and the feet shod with, the shoes of the gospel and all the things that he talks about. Much like you would imagine, like if you watch a modern movie where a police officer puts body armor on, right? Like to protect ourselves from things coming at us. The armor of God, to put ourselves in that garb, is something that you and I, who are on the way to becoming warrior saints, who are walking on the way of the warrior saint, must be adept at equipping ourselves with. Now, let me tell you, that's sometimes confusing for some. I mean, even for me, sometimes I'm like, what does that all mean? We produced an entire series, and we called it simply that, the armor of God, which is to help us understand what St. Paul means and how to put on that armor, if you will, in our own lives, so that when this diabolical, devilish stuff comes at us through the guise of someone wanting to argue in socials or wherever it may be, we are prepared to handle it so that we don't end up getting sucked into the mess and we come out on the other side truly as warrior saints. Now, here's what I need you to do. In order to access that series and really put it into your own life, just visit us at warriorsaints.org. Halfway down that page, you're going to see a program called The Way of the Warrior Saint. And this program is not just for men, it's not just for women, it's for anyone who's interested in becoming the very best person that they can. Just subscribe. It's not hard to do. Right in the middle of that page, subscribe to The Way of the Warrior Saint. And once you have access, search for the armor of God. In fact, it'll probably pop on the right side. It's a category for you to choose. And then you get after it. You start watching those videos, you start studying the scripture that we give you, and then you start implementing practical tips into your life immediately. Once that happens, you will start to see a little bit of a change inside your heart. Love you, beautiful people. We'll be back again tomorrow to finish up the week strong on Friday. Until then, as always, keep walking on the way of the Warrior Saint.